Chapter 1. Prologue. You are listening at famvetv.info. In the midst of the green and lush woods, a giggle of a young child could be heard. The young child, who looked about 8 years old, was laughing at the antics of wolves that were in front of him. Wind fluttered his hair, sending a light breeze over his body, but he did not feel the cold. Instead, the young child felt warmth as he watched the wolves run around and play. He felt envious of how carefree and wished how he could join them. There were 3 wolves that lay down next to the young child's feet as he sat on a large flat rock. The wolves were thrice the size of a normal wolf, with sharp fangs and eyes that has a glint of intelligence and sharpness. One of the wolves nuzzled its snout against child's leg, wanting attention. The young child laughed as he stroked the wolf's soft black fur. It felt smooth and warm as the child bent down and hugged the wolf. The wolf began to prod against the child's waist, bringing the child to loud laughter. "That tickles, Latham," the child cried, laughing. Few meters away, there were more wolves running and howling. The sight of these ferocious wolves should have terrified this young child, who was alone in the woods. However, he seems more enamored by the sight, his eyes brightening with happiness and excitement as he watched them. Suddenly, a wolf, larger than the rest of them, walked towards the child, baring its fangs. Its dark eyes glistened in the bright sunlight as it let out a low growl. The 3 wolves that were lying next to the child stepped away from the child, bowing their heads toward the large wolf, as if in respect. The large wolf suddenly morphed into a.k.d man. Its dark fur disappeared, changing to a smooth sun-kissed skin. His arms and legs ripped with muscles as its claws transformed into fists and feet. Long gone the furry face of a wolf, and was replaced with a chiseled and strong face. He has a deep cleft chin and jet black hair like the dark night. But his eyes were still the same pitch black eyes that were filled with intellect and brilliance. The man grabbed the bag that was beside the young child and took out some clothes. He swiftly put it on and patted the young child on the head. "Aren't you bored, Eric?" he asked in concern. The young child, Eric, shook his head vehemently. Truthfully, he had fun watching the wolves. He did not want to say that he was bored because this was the first time his parents had brought him to the woods and let him stay there. Usually, children who cannot shift were not allowed to go to the woods while the shifters went for their monthly run. It was for the safety of the children and so that the shifters were not exposed. In the town of Birkendahl, there were history of shifters living there. Centuries ago, these shifters had lived together with humans in peace and harmony. They had worked and cohabitat the town peacefully, where the shifters were also be able to shift into their wolf form freely. Until one time, there has been an inner conflict in the shifter community, which leads to rogue. Shifters will become rogue if they cannot control their wolf or has been without a pack for many months. During the inner conflict, one of the alpha's brothers were not satisfied with becoming a beta. He had challenged the alpha, who was his brother, again and again. But he has lost all of those matches. Unsatisfied, he had sworn himself out of the pack and became a rogue himself, together with his followers. Many innocent humans were sacrificed during the conflict. These rogues had involved the humans because they do not agree with living with humans. They believed that the town of Birkendahl should be a shifter town. This had angered the humans who in turn began to pit war against the shifters. Due to many of the shifters changed to rogue, the shifters were weak against the humans. They finally came to an agreement where the shifters should no longer roam freely in the world. Hence, the shifters of today could only hide and act as humans. Though, these shifters could not suppress their inner wolf, thus, the alpha of the packs had to choose days where they could be able to shift in their wolf form. Yes, there are some people who still accept shifters in their community, but there are also other people who still hate them. Nowadays, the pack dwindled down to a few, and one of them was the Kendall pack. The Kendalls had sworn that they would not leave the home where they were born. The Kendalls was one of the founding families of the town. Not many people in the town knew that the Kendalls was also a shifter family. They had taken the name Kendall from the Birkendall, so that they would not forget their history. The shifter who was standing in front of young Eric was the alpha of the Kendall pack. And he was also the father of Eric, named Lachlan Kendall. In the human world, he was the police chief of the town, who had been in service for more than 20 years. Other than criminals, he has also captured rogues. It was one of the ways that he had done to keep the town safe and also to not expose the shifters further. Not long after Eric had shook his head, another dark brown wolf came up to them. It immediately morphed into a beautiful N.A.K.E.D woman. Her L.U.S. Her hair was a gorgeous shade of brown, a color similar like melted chocolate. Her glassy brown eyes were round and clear, as if one can see the reflection of themselves in them. She was also tall, but not as tall as the alpha, with a pear-shaped figure and a sweet and mischievous smile. She took her clothes from the same bag that the alpha has taken his clothes and put them on. She crouched down in front of Eric and stroked his dark hair. "Hello, sweetie. Are you having fun?" Eric nodded vigorously. "Yes, Mom," he said excitedly, his eyes sparkling. Eric's mother, Luella Landis, stood up and gave a peck on her husband's cheek. The alpha gave out a low growl, as if he was not satisfied with a mere peck. He grabbed her by the waist and gave her a full kiss on the mouth. Luella wrapped her arms around her husband's shoulder and returned his kiss. The two kissed as if they were in their own world, not noticing that their child was watching them. To be fair, Eric had watched them kissed all the time and it was kind of a norm for him. He did not mind their constant PDAs because he knew how much they love each other. Sometimes, they could not bear to be apart from each other, even for a day. That was how strong their love for each other was. "Someday, I will have the same happiness as them when I find my own mate," he thought to himself. Listen to the full novel at famvetv.info, direct link in the description.